Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Amanda Trumpower, writer for Jesus Lovers Who Dig Dragons, Detectives, and Droids. This is a behind-the-scenes video for my Power Pup 3 Kickstarter to celebrate making 75% of our goal. I have a guest with me today. This is JJ Johnson. He is a fellow Christian middle grade author and was involved in Power Pup 3, which we'll talk about in a minute. So JJ, thank you for being here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I am the author of the Iggy and Oz series, which has 5 books in it at the moment. You can get those out on pretty much any of the platforms that sell books, paperback and ebook. The very first book right now, Iggy and Oz, the Plastic Dinos of Doom, is free on ebook on pretty much all the ebook platforms. So if you want to check out a free book, you can go download that for free right now.
Awesome. So you were involved in Power Pup 3. In what capacity were you involved?
Well, I wrote the family devotion, and the family devotion is I've never seen anybody do a family devotion in a middle grade or children's book like this before. So I first noticed your family devotions when your first book came out, and Jason C. Joyner. He actually sent that devotion to me, the proofread, and just like, hey, would you take a look at this? And I'm like, what are you doing this for? And he goes, oh, I'm doing it for Power Pup. And I'm like, Power Pup, is that Amanda's book? And he goes, yeah. I was like, I just had Amanda on the podcast. So I was very excited when you asked me to do the family devotion. And, I think, to be able to take a book like that and just have a little devotion. And of course, this one all revolves around what do we fear, and God being with us throughout, during our fearful times and the times that we're afraid. So that's where my contribution lies at the moment.
Well, and I really appreciate the contributions of fellow Christian authors like you and like Jason Joyner, because one of the things that I try to do with my books is they have biblical content, but we're all here to hear a story. We're not here to hear a sermon. I don't want to be hitting kids over the head with the Bible. So I don't necessarily feel like the application and the here's what we learned today is appropriate in the story. And that's where the idea of the devotions came in after the fact, because it gives everybody a chance to enjoy the story and see the characters doing what they're naturally going to do. But then it gives us a minute to kind of step back and kind of overtly talk about some of the faith principles that we encountered. So in Power Pup 3, yes, the theme is overcoming fears, because Calvin has this terrible fear of sharks, even though he's a superhero, and he gets thrown in the middle of the ocean on a shark-related shenanigans. So he has to overcome that. Is there something in your real life that you are scared of that you have had to kind of overcome at times?
I give off the rough masculine look sometimes, but I am a wimp when it comes to a lot of things, spiders or things like that. I hate snakes. I will run screaming from a snake. I hate them. Doesn't matter if it's a little snake, big snake, whatever. I hate snakes. I go out hiking and I'm looking around to make sure there's not a snake, like, off to the side, ready to just like jump out and bite me. Maybe it's I watched too many Indiana Jones movies as a kid or something, but snakes drive me nuts. There was a time I grew up on a ranch and farm, and I used to bale hay for, as a kid. And I'd be up at the top of the hay loft, and I grabbed the bales of hay as they were coming off the conveyor, and then I'd stack them. And I remember one time I'm just sitting there and I grab one, and there's a snake hanging halfway out, and it's like snapping at me, and I'm dropping the bell. So snakes is one fear. And another fear is I have this fear that, like, this is a weird phobia. When I'm driving on a 4-lane road and there's not a median and there's just that yellow line, I always have to drive over to the right hand lane. I'm always afraid that like some other idiot driver is going to like cross into the lane. So I don't get into that left lane unless it's time to turn. So that's another crazy little quirk about me. So there you go, folks. Y'all know my flaws now. So.
Okay, we did not pre-plan this. I can actually relate to both of those. I have intense snake phobia. The old Disney animated Robin Hood movie where all the characters are animals. That snake in there, about all I can handle. If it looks any more realistic than that, even if it's a cartoon, they move way too realistically. Even the sound of a snake, even if I don't see it, just the sound of it. It's not rational. It's not, but yes, I definitely relate to that. And if I had been the one holding that hay barrel, I probably would have never returned to that location, even if it was my home. Been like, sorry, mom, I have to move somewhere else.
Just full disclosure, people, I struggle with anxiety disorder, and so I have to fight anxiety all the time, and that is it's hard and it's difficult, and I think a lot of it is just you know unfounded and it doesn't make sense. But at the end of the day, you have to I find solutions just by starting my morning every day in God's word, and that helps me kind of have that ability to get through the day. But there will be those times throughout the day it's just like you feel it coming on, and you have to take a deep breath and just take a step back. So
I agree with that. My husband and I just recently decided to try to firm up our daily Bible reading commitment. We have 5-year-old twins, so the last several years have been kind of nuts. And we started the book business when they were about 2, so it's just been a busy life, like everybody. But we are trying to firm up our daily Bible reading commitment, and we have found that the Bible reading in the morning, it's not anything magical. Like, we're just reading through Genesis right now, but just the simple fact of taking 10 minutes to read through the Bible in the morning before we deal with parent stress or life stress or whatever, it has really helped. It's not a magic bullet, but it helps you, at least it helps us maintain our peace for a little bit longer, maintain our patience. And it's been great. So I invited you to be the guest writer for Power Pup 3 because I knew that you had a lot of experience working with and writing for boys, specifically Iggy and Oz series. So tell us about those books.
well, the Iggy and Oz series I started writing in 2018. So the first one was published in September 2019, and that was the Plastic Dinos of Doom. And basically, that book is the story of a 12-year-old boy who discovers that his plastic dinosaurs have come to life, and he and his friends basically have to figure out a way to stop them before they end up wrecking the neighborhood for good. First of all, I wanted to write a book for my kids, but the second thing is that I was talking to parents and even some teachers, and a lot of them were having trouble finding books for boys that weren't things like almost graphic novels. Now, I love graphic novels. I love comic books. I grew up on that type of stuff, and but a lot of the books out there specifically for boys were, Diary of the Wimpy Kid or Last Kids on Earth. Now, not that those aren't good stories. My kids love Last Kids on Earth, but at the end of the day, they are sort of graphic novels. And so I started looking around. I was like, okay, what are the books that I grew up on? And I started thinking, okay, boys, they want to read stories that are short chapters. They want to read stories that move quick and that there are short books. And so that's really kind of how that book came about. One of the reasons is because I wanted to write and see if I could get boys who don't like to read to actually read. So that's book 1. Book 2 is the Soda Pop Wars. Book 3 is the Living Snot. And then
that one grosses me out so much, which probably means you did a good job writing for boys.
Hey, it won an award this year too. And then the book 5, the new book is The Great Ice Cream Truck. There's a mysterious man, quirky man named Mr. Chesterton, and he passed away, and there was an estate sale, and so all the items in his house have been kind of bought up, and they're all over the neighborhood. Like a soda pop machine that gives you superpowers when you drink the soda, or a chest that brings these plastic dinosaurs to life, or a handkerchief that when you blow your nose, the snot comes to life and just turns into this old giant blob like the 1950s movie The Blob, or ice cream that hypnotizes you. So the entire series centers around who is Mr. Chesterton, and that's where we're getting to in the next arc of the series.
That's awesome. That's a really great series setup. I love that. That's right. So we're both parents, and as parents, we are trying to find appropriate entertainment options for our kids. As someone who understands that, and understands that certain types of parents are looking for certain things and then other types of parents are looking for other types of things. What sort of promises do you bring to the table when it comes to your books, the stuff that will not be in it and then the stuff that will be in it?
Well, I tell people I write pulp fiction for kids. And what I mean by that
I
is
love that.
I'm a pulp writer. You're not going to come to an Iggy and Oz book and find a bunch of cool quotes that you can put up on a letterboard and it's going to be Instagram worthy. That's not my type of story. But I am going to bring a story that's fun, that's entertaining, and I'm going to do it in a way that the kids have. There's a satisfying ending to each story, but also leads into the next book after that. So that's the first thing you're going to get. One, you're going to get a funny story. Two, you're going to get a story that you can read as a parent with your kids. One of the things that everybody messaged me is about and say, we're reading this as a family and even us as parents, because here's the deal. Some of the jokes I put in there might not get, but the mom and dad are going to get. And we usually, when you're reading the story as a mom and dad, if you start laughing, even if the kids don't get the joke, they start laughing. There's a lot of things in it that parents will get, and it's just supposed to be good, wholesome family fun. There is a moral lesson that Iggy has to learn in every story. And I try not to be on the nose about it. That even sometimes the bully needs a friend, or maybe it's not telling a lie, or maybe it's don't become the bully that you're fighting against, or maybe it's not judging others before you get to know them in a way. There's always going to be that amoral lesson that everybody in society agrees on that Iggy is trying to learn. Those are the promises I do make, and I hope I keep them. I'm not a gender writer. I'm not interested in putting out a deep theme. I sort of discover the theme of the story as I'm going along. I let the theme just kind of organically come alive when I'm writing. And that's usually just the way I do it. I don't go into it and say, okay, I'm going to write a book about this and I'm going to build the story around this, because I don't think that works really. That's just my opinion on writing and just the way I like to do it.
The fact that Calvin is afraid of sharks happened exactly the way that you're describing. I was on the second or third draft, and the story of Power Pup 3 was largely set. Like the bad guy was there, and the process of catching him was there. And I was trying to bring just some more refined emotions out of the characters. And I realized that Calvin was afraid of sharks. And that very naturally lent itself in the devotion to a conversation about overcoming your fears. But I didn't set out to put a character who's afraid of sharks in the middle of the ocean just so we could talk about how God helps you with your
Yeah.
fears. It's really awesome when the themes naturally come out. As far as my books go, if you've seen the Kickstarter video, you kind of already know some of the highlights. But like JJ, I always try to prioritize story first. I do have overt Christian messages. My characters are Christians, and their faith will come out naturally in their lives, but they're still going to make mistakes, and they're still going to behave in ways that God doesn't approve of at times. So one of the things Mitten struggles with is she's bossy, and that can be not kind at times. And then like JJ, I also try to emphasize the humor. My humor is a little bit less situational than JJ's and a little bit more relational. One of my huge inspirations for my writing style is the sci-fi channel show Warehouse 13, which has just delightful characters and delightful humor within those characters. So a lot of my humor comes from relationship differences between the different characters. Like JJ, I don't have an agenda in my books in the sense that I'm not trying to make any comments on gender ideology or whom should be
Yeah.
allowed to fall in love with whom. I kind of subscribe to the Bible's principles there. So if the Bible says that it's okay, that's what you're going to see in the books. And if the Bible says that it's not okay, you're not going to find that in my books. I don't think either of us do like swearing or graphic violence or anything like that.
No.
Yeah. Awesome. So, JJ, in the book production process, in the book world, what is next for you in 2024?
Wow, I have a busy year. So I just released The Great Ice Cream Truck Heist. That came out on January 4th. So that was my first release of the year. I have a second release coming up this May, and that is it started out. This book is almost 2 years in the production. I co-wrote a book with Jason C. Joyner, who writes the Rise of the Anointed series, which is basically teenage superhero. He took his characters, and then we have a friend named Steve Raza, who's another award-winning author, who wrote a series called Mercury Hell. If you read my books, then your kids are going to end up reading Jason's books, and as they get a little older, they're going to end up reading Steve's books. But we took his character, Mercury, and basically we just brought all of our main characters together and we wrote a story. It's like a big epic crossover event. So even if you're not familiar with Iggy and Oz, or you're not familiar with Mercury, or you're not familiar with Jason's Rise of the Anointed, this could be a stepping stone into all the books. So we're going to run a Kickstarter in that. That book took 2 years to write. Part of the reason we wrote it is because Jason was getting the rights back to his book, and he hadn't been writing in a while. So he kind of had this idea like, hey, what if we wrote a crossover? And he wrote the first chapter. And honestly, it was supposed to be a short story. But when you put 3 discovery writers together,
it's not short.
2 years later, you end up with a novel. So
that's hilarious.
It is finished. It is done. It's with the editor right now. Kirk DuPont is going to be doing the cover for us. And
awesome.
So that will be coming out via Kickstarter. We'll be launching that via Kickstarter. Then I have a short story collection coming out this fall that is not middle grade related. But I like writing men's adventure stories, like writing stories for boys, but I also want to write stories that men will enjoy as well. So I have a short story collection that's a lot of sci-fi and things like that. That will come out in late September. And then I have the Iggy and Oz short story collection that will launch in December of next year, in December of 2024. And that will be a total of 20 Iggy and Oz short stories that will lead into the next book in the Iggy and Oz series. So
that's awesome. I really love the crossover idea. I've been thinking about that too with some friends. And then I realized my series is anthropomorphic, which means it's animals who talk like people. So I really pigeonholed myself because my universe doesn't have humans. So the crossover there would be weird. That is pretty much it for our behind the scenes video. Like I said, we are at 75%, and I will let everybody know when we are at 100. If you missed my first announcement, Kickstarter says that we're at 100%, but we have a spam backer that contributed a sizable amount of money, and I expect that money to be withdrawn at some point because I do believe that they're a spam backer. So although Kickstarter says we're at 100%, I'm not sure I trust that. So I will let everybody know when I think that we're actually at 100%. And if the spam backer is watching and is not a spam backer, I do apologize. Your behavior just seemed a little bit spammy. So maybe we should talk about how to avoid that in the future. But thank you, JJ, for joining me and for supporting the campaign. And I really look forward to seeing your Iggy and Oz stuff come out later this year.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.